didn't realize that they were all invasive and they were bad. And it took me years to come to terms with this. I actually was first introduced to the problem with the coqui frog. I don't know if there are any Puerto Ricans in the audience, but the coqui frog is the national frog of Puerto Rico. They love this frog. They identify so much with it that they call themselves coquis. And the sound, I don't know if you can hear this. Okay? Now that sound is so revered in Puerto Rico that people can't sleep without it. They travel with recordings of coquis to help them sleep. Well, in the mid-'80s, the coqui frog came to Hawaii, probably in a shipment of plants from Florida or something like that. And it wasn't considered a problem by anyone in the Department of Agriculture because frogs are good for agriculture. They eat pests, they eat insects. And Hawaii has no native frogs, no native reptiles, no native mammals except for a bat and the monk seal. Hawaii is a lava island in the middle of the ocean. Everything had to get there from somewhere, which really challenges the whole concept of what's native and what's not native. Everything is introduced. Well, in 1999, the coqui became a problem because there was suddenly money for invasive species control. The Executive Order 13112, signed by President Clinton in 1999, created the Invasive Species Council. And suddenly, the coqui was now a problem. And there was a massive campaign to vilify the coqui, which I was finding shocking because I was walking into this grocery store, and there was a big poster with a frog on it. And my first reaction was, this must be Save the Frog, right? I mean, frogs are dying around the world. They are. They're like the canary in the coal mine. And they're dying around the world from fungus and from development and from other things they don't even know, and climate change. Well, we had these frogs now, and they were saying that the frogs were going to eat all of the insects in Hawaii and basically starve our insectivorous birds. There won't be any insects left because there's no predators for the coquis. And their sound was equated to a chainsaw, a leaf blower, and a table saw, literally. They started saying that this sound was up to 100 decibels, and a hysteria was begun about the coqui. They also said, and this was in 1999, they also said nothing will kill the coqui but caffeine. Now, caffeine is not a pesticide, but it was going to be tested as one. And they were going to apply caffeine 100 times more concentrated than coffee. You would need to have chemical warfare suits. They were going to go through the forests and spray it with caffeine to kill the frog. And it was going to burn through the skin of the frog and give them a heart attack. They also didn't know what it would do to people or the groundwater or non-target species. Frankly, they didn't care about non-target species because they're non-native. So I was, as a medical anthropologist, I have training in medicine, anthropology, biochemistry, and I knew that caffeine is a poison. There's no antidote for caffeine poisoning. So I was very upset about this and concerned. And I was seeing that the argument against the coqui was not scientific. There was no research. This was, we're afraid it's going to take over. And the words invasive, take over, it has to be eradicated. All of these are war metaphors. And I started seeing that this was propaganda. We weren't getting a scientific analysis of the coqui frog. There was no information. This was propaganda. And being a biochemist, I realized that there's a lot of money that goes into developing a pesticide, and I was wondering, what's the money behind caffeine? Why are they doing this? Because they had to get an emergency exemption from the Environmental Protection Agency to test caffeine in the environment. And they were going to let people and animals and everything back in after 24 hours of spraying. There would still be residue. They didn't know what was going to go on. Well, I Googled genetically engineered caffeine, because that's what you do these days. Everything is genetically engineered. And lo and behold, University of Hawaii has a patent on the caffeine gene, okay? They were able to extract the gene of caffeine from coffee, put it in, and you can then take that and put it into bacteria and basically grow caffeine in the lab. And the university owned the patent. It was obtained in 1999. Coincidentally, the same year that they said this was a pest and that they said nothing would kill them but caffeine. So obviously, there was a big conflict of interest here. And I started to be aware that invasion biology is a real threat to the environment. And here you were having a species that was being vilified. Now, I love animals, and to see a frog being considered, you know, the newspapers weekly would say that this was a shrill shriek. Literally, those are the words. This is a shrill shriek that will keep you awake at night, drive away tourists, and even cause hearing loss. Seriously. And they were measuring decibels 1.5 feet from the frog and saying, you know, which is really a strange thing because they're in trees. But, you know, and they were saying that this is 100 decibels, and there's nothing good you can say about these animals. Now, you go to Puerto Rico, there's nothing bad you can say about these animals. So I realized Hawaii didn't have a frog problem. It had an attitude problem. And I started fighting this and exposing this, and actually helped, when I told the EPA about the conflict of interest, they pulled the exemption, and about $9 million from the USDA that was going to go to Hawaii to kill the frogs was stopped when I told them about this. Because it was an obvious conflict, but it began my journey.